Good morning, second graders. I hope you had fun making some line plots yesterday. We're going to continue to work with line plots today. So we're on Module 7, Lesson 25, and our objective is we can and we will use data to create line plots and answer questions about the line plot. So similarly to yesterday, we are going to create line plots. So if you didn't watch that video yesterday, please go back and watch it first. And then today we're going to look at those line plots to answer questions about them. As a reminder, this is some information about line plots. We always have a title at the top that tells us what we're looking at. We always have a line because it's a line plot. These numbers at the bottom on this line plot tell us the number of siblings that these people we're asking about have. Remember, siblings is a brother or sister. So in this graph, they asked a class of kids how many siblings they have. Some kids had 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Each X stands for a kid. So only one kid had 5 siblings. Three kids have 4 siblings. 4 kids have 3 siblings. And 2 kids have 0 siblings. So these X's stand for a kid. And usually not usually, but sometimes we have a key that tells us. Okay, so today we're going to make another line plot. So remember, they start with a data table. So it says the chart shows the length of paper second grade students used in their art project. So some students used paper that was 3 feet, some used paper that was 4 feet, some used paper that was 5 feet, and some used paper that was 6 feet. And these are the number of students that used each length of paper. All right, so this line plot looks different than the ones we had yesterday. We don't have a title, we don't have our hash marks, we don't have our numbers at the bottom. So we're gonna have to fill that information in today. So I'm gonna go back to my data table to figure out what I want my title to be. This chart shows the length of paper second grade students used in their art project. So I'm thinking that my title can say lengths of paper for art project. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. All right, so length of paper for art project is the title of my graph because I know that's the information I am graphing today. Now I need to put my hash marks in, and I want to kind of keep them equally spaced. I need at least 1, 2, 3, 4 hash marks. 1 for 3 feet, 1 for 4 feet, 1 for 5 feet, and 1 for 6 feet. So I'm just going to draw those in and try and make sure they're equally spaced. 3, about the same length, 4, 5, and where do I want my 6 one to be? 6 right there. So those look like they're pretty equally spaced, so I think that's pretty good. And remember, you might have to erase and move stuff around just to make sure there's an equal amount of space in between each one. Now I need to label what each hash mark stands for. So first you do your title, then we place our hash marks and label them. So this first one is going to be 3 feet because that's the first length of paper. The next one is going to be 4 feet because that's the next length of paper. 5 feet and 6 feet. Okay, so I placed my hash marks and I labeled them. Now, the only thing that's left to do is to mark the number of students who used each length. So I can look at my data table to determine that. So when I look at 3 feet, I had 2 students who used 3 foot paper. So I am going to put 2 X's, 1 and 2. Okay, so my 3 feet are done. 1 and 2. And I'm going to make sure they're fairly close together because I see that I have to do 11 by 4 feet. So I know this might come over the top of my chart. All right, now I need 11 X's because 11 kids used 4 foot paper. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes these are hard to move because they're so tiny, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there we are. I have 11 X's because 11 students used 4-foot paper. All right, our next one is 9. So I'm going to put 9 X's by 5 feet. Oh, there's 9 X's by 5 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And lastly, 6 students used 6-foot paper, so I'm going to put 6 X's by 6 feet. So there we go. I drew 6 X's by 6 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, from this information, I can easily see that most students use 4-foot and the least use 4-foot paper, and the least amount of students use 3-foot paper, because I clearly have more X's for 4 feet than any other one, and I clearly have less. I have the least amount of X's for 3 feet. Okay, so now we're going to use the information we learned from our graph to answer some questions about it. And that's really the new piece of information from today's work, is that we're going to be talking about the graph and answering questions. So now we need to answer some questions about this line plot, or we might say analyze the information. Okay, the first question says, how many art projects were made? Look at the information that's given to me on the data table and in my line plot. So I'm going to add up the total amount of X's, or the number of students, because that's the amount of art projects that were made. All right, so for 3 feet paper, I had 2 students, so that's 2. For 4-foot paper, I had 11 students, so 2 plus 11 is 13. For 5-foot paper, I had 9 students. So when I'm adding a 9, I pretend like I'm adding a 10. So 13 plus 10 is 24. Sorry, 13 plus 10 is 23. But then I'm going to take one away because I really only added 9. So now I'm at 22 students. And then for 6-foot paper, I used 6 students used 6-foot paper. So 22 plus 6 is 28. So there were 28 students in total because I counted up all my X's, and that's the amount of students who created an art project. So I'm going to answer my question, and I'm going to say there were 28 art projects made. Now I would recommend you probably write your addition equation problem down. So 3 plus 4, oops, I'm adding the total. I was adding these totals down here, and that's an easy mistake you can make. So make sure you're looking at the right numbers when you're analyzing or thinking about the data. It's these numbers I want to be adding. 2 plus 11 plus 9 plus 6 equals 28. 28 art projects. Okay, next question. What length of paper occurred most often? So this word occurred is one you might see when we're talking about line plots. Occurred means how many times it appeared or how many times it was used. So in this, I can easily see that the length of the paper that occurred most often was the 4-foot paper, because I have the most X's by 4-foot paper. So this paper showed up the most. So I am going to write the length of paper that occurred most often was 4-foot, 4-foot paper. All right, next question. If 8 more students used 5-foot paper, 5 feet of paper, and 6 more students used 6 feet of paper, how would it change how this line plot looks? So let's talk about that. If 8 more students used 5-foot paper, so I would have to add 8 more students up on here, and 6 more students use 6-foot paper. So I would have 9 plus 8 is 17. So 5-foot paper would have 17. And 6 plus 6 is 12. So 6-foot paper would have 12. So if I added those amounts to 5-foot paper and 6-foot paper, 5-foot paper would occur most often, and 6-foot paper would be second, leaving 4-foot paper in third, where now it's first. So I'm going to write something similar to that. So if 8 more students use 5 foot, how would this change how the line plot looks? I'm going to say 5 foot paper would have the most students, or I can even say X's, and 6 foot would have second most. So I'm just changing and writing what would happen if we added that. So how this plot would change. If you actually, when you have questions like that, if you want to add on, just add on to it in a different color so I can tell that you're answering a question. Last question says, draw a conclusion about the data in the line plot. So you're going to see these on your work today as well. Draw a conclusion. So it's basically just means look at your line plot. What can you say about it? So I'm going to draw a conclusion. One thing that I can say about this line plot is that not many students use 3 foot paper. Oops, that's not what I wanted that to look like. Let me fix that really quick for you guys. Thank you for your patience. Not many students used 3 foot paper. A conclusion is basically just something you can say by looking at this data. So what could I say? I could have said most students use 4 foot paper. There's a couple different things that you can say. So you can, when you're drawing a conclusion, you might not have the same answer as everyone else in our class. It's your conclusion. It's something you can tell by looking at our line plot data. All right, so for your work today, you're going to do exactly what I just did. You have 2 graphs to create, only 1 graph to create and answer questions about, and then a second graph that's created for you. You just have to look at that line plot to answer the questions. You guys are going to do an excellent job with this. Have fun.